Tonight we will be doing some thinking about discerning, particularly in this area of understanding evil in the context of pathological narcissism. As you remember from my first presentation, I said that one of the contributions of Scott Peck has been to talk about the way in which pathological narcissism is related to what we know in theological reflections as evil. I also said to you that I think it's important for us to be very clear that the way in which he has divided this, the spectrum of personality issues and problems is problematic, in which he has all of the personality disorders, etc., and difficulties, neurotic, and so forth. And then in one group of people who are very ill, he has decided to call those people evil, the ones that have extremely severe narcissistic pathology. I said to you that I think that is really misleading, and it misses the way in which all of us have, to some degree, some difficulties in terms of pathological narcissism. I do a lot of teaching on this type of area in my teaching at Chicago Theological Seminary. One course that I've been teaching a long time is a course called Psychopathology and Theological Perspective. I always use Scott Peck's People of the Lie as a bad example of how to do this. And what I suggest, and here again we've got 30 or more hours of material, which we're going to go over very fast. What I do is to take the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, and I have my students take a syndrome and do a theological analysis of that syndrome, looking for the particular way in which they might understand each syndrome to reflect what we might call in some way the demonic or evil or pathological narcissism in some form. It's very clear that when you understand the way in which narcissistic wounding is an important part in the difficulties of human beings, and that you get to the point that you can see how everything from obsessive compulsive or compulsive personality disorders to histrionic personality disorders right across the board, you can, if you understand enough about narcissistic pathology, you can see the way in which that syndrome also reflects this wounding and this difficulty, or we might say it manifests evil in this way. So in other words, rather than making a handful of very troubled people carry the brunt of being evil, it's kind of more like what we might say about sin. You don't ask, are you a sinner? You ask, how am I a sinner? And you try to get some sense about how your life has been compromised in some way by the forces of evil or the demonic. In the context of this lecture tonight, I just wanted to start out by saying that I was particularly appreciative of the way in which John Doerly characterized spirituality, the nature of spirituality, and particularly his emphasis on the importance of spirituality in accessing the forces of life, accessing the energies of life, so that life might be lived with joy and be lived with fullness. Because that is precisely the kind of area we get into when we examine what narcissistic pathology is really like. And what I'd like to do tonight is to talk with you about pathological narcissism, give you some of the understanding of how wounding in one's narcissism happens, some of the marks of that, some of the current theories about how that is treated, and I'd like to relate it then to some of the things that I think that Jungian psychology offers us in terms of understanding the varieties of expression that this kind of wounding can take. And so when we speak of discerning the way in which pathological narcissism or the expression of evil in psychological forms affects us, we will take a look at the different ways which it can be understood to afflict us, and the way in which Jungian psychology helps us understand that. Let me start out by having us reflect a little bit on the mythology of Satan. To get us, we're doing a psychological reflection on evil now. And I recommended that you look at those books by Jeffrey Burton Russell on the history of Satan, and they have a number here in the bookstore. One of the interesting things that becomes clear from Jeffrey Burton Russell's research is that the way in which Satan is talked about in mythology and in history makes him sound like someone that we would talk about today as a person with a severe narcissistic personality disorder. Some of the things that are emphasized about Satan in some of the legends are that Satan is very envious of the place that God holds, and that he feels that his beauty is not being seen and appreciated. And one of the stories has him waiting until God leaves the room and going up and sitting down on God's throne and having his particular group of angels, this is before they leave, have this particular group of angels come around and see how he looks sitting on the throne. And he says something to the effect of, I think my beauty is even more outstanding than that of God. And they all agree. And one of the stories that Jeffrey Burton Russell tells is the chagrin and shame when God walks back in the room and confronts him about this. It's very interesting that this idea of Satan as being someone who wants to be seen and wants to be celebrated and wants to be noticed and wants to be seen as beautiful is a theme which is repeated throughout a lot of mythology about Satan. And one of the reasons why people think that Satan represents a good that needs to be integrated is that Satan in some ways seems to represent our exhibitionistic self, the part that wants to have a little glory. You've heard of sola deo gloria, to God alone be the glory. Well, the picture of Satan is that he can say, well, why not a little bit for me? Why not a little glory for me? And when we get into a look at narcissistic development in a moment, you will see why this image of Satan as somebody who is longing to be seen, longing to be noticed, longing to have just a little bit of that glory, or what you and I, glory is a word that somehow parallels what we might call numinosity. When we speak of archetypal energies, when we speak of numinosity, that special magical energy that the contact with the archetypal self gives us. It gives you a little sense of glory.